Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Ranking Member. Mr. Chairman, thank you for joining us. I'll start by commending you for your leadership at the SEC. I appreciate the agenda you've helped accelerate over the last year. I also appreciate the openness of your comments today, your response to questions, and the conversations we've had in office and as members of this committee. I do want to raise a concern about what I believe is occurring, an increased use of enforcement initiatives, often referred to as regulation by enforcement. At least one commissioner recently asserted that when the commission sees a widespread problem affecting investors, it should, quote, issue its own guidance or promulgate a rule and put an end to the problem before it hurts investors, under the belief, end quote, under the belief that it is both better for investors and large enforcement initiative. It is better for investors than a large enforcement initiative and provides regulated industries with appropriate notice what the SEC expects from them. Do you agree with that or have a comment as to what was being conveyed there?
So, Senator, your question highlights one of the challenges of regulating a broad market. If you see widespread conduct that's clearly problematic, there's no reason to provide guidance. You just go out and deal with it. If you see widespread conduct that is, let's put this, a new area, people, reasonably could conclude one way or the other. My view is that guidance and loud guidance is the best way to deal with that. Life is complicated. A lot of things fall somewhere in between. I think one of the things you and I have talked about is the Share Clash Initiative. I think that where we were was much closer, if not all the way at the end of the spectrum. People have different views, but I appreciate that spectrum, and I think our enforcement division and our inspections division understand that. Part of my job is to make sure they understand that and make the appropriate selection how to pursue conduct that needs to improve.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in that regard, you've said before that staff statements and guidance do not create enforceable legal obligations. Yet, I think we often see the SEC point to risk alerts and enforcement proceedings brought against other industry participants as justification for appropriate notice. I'll use the February 2018 Share Class Selection Disclosure Initiative regarding disclosures for conflicts of interest from certain fee arrangements as an example. SEC staff pointed to a 2016 risk alert as evidence that the industry was given sufficient notice about what the SEC expects from regulated firms in disclosures, such as the use of may versus will. However, I understand that the initiative has penalized firms for activity dating back to 2014 and beyond. In other words, previous to the notice that you're claiming occurred. Is there something here that I should be worried about?
I don't think there's something here in particular that you should be worried about, but I do think that the principles you articulate are something that we should always be concerned about. We should not be in the business of gotcha, but we do need to be in the business of making sure that we enforce our laws.
Well, I mean,
and if the commission feels some way about it, we, the commission, should articulate it. We shouldn't be relying on staff guidance. If there is to be a change in the law, that should come from the commission, or change in the regulation.
I fully support the initiative's objectives to provide important protections for our retail investors. That's not really the issue. I don't know exactly what due process means in today's world, but notice has always been something that is included in due process. And in order to, one, I would hope that those that you have the ability to regulate, if they knew what the position of the SEC was, they would comply voluntarily. That's a positive in and of itself. And secondly, for there to occur something in which there seemingly was no notice, denies them the ability to voluntarily comply, and it eliminates the opportunity for them to have, quote, due process.
Understood. And
thank you. Chairman, thank you.